Welcome to the Nursing Career Transformation Roundtable. My name is Kate Loving-Schenk of katelovingshenk.com, author of the Prayer Prescription series, creator of this roundtable, and also of Kate Loving's podcast, Prayer Podcast. Today, our subject matter is Your Relationships Are Your Mirror, and our guest is Karen Green, who is a shadow worker worker facilitator. Join me in welcoming Karen Green. Hello, Karen. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Kate. How are you?
Good. I was so curious, what draws you to doing this work? You know, in reality, what draws you to working with people to uncover their projections of blame, guilt, and shame, and helping them to take responsibility for their lives? What draws you to this kind of work?
Well, to start with, I guess because I had to deal with all those things myself at one point.
Yes.
And there was a time when my life came to this place where there was no way to hide from my own shadows anymore. Like, they caught up with me. Mm-hmm. And I came into contact with a woman named Elisa Starkweather, and she has a program called Priestess Path, and she is a shadow work facilitator and has been doing shadow work for a long time, and she introduced me to the modality of doing shadow work. And through doing a series of shadow work processes and working with her and other shadow work facilitators, it really opened up so much for myself in my life that I just wanted to share this with other people. And so I spent many years now training and becoming certified and working with a lot of people doing shadow work processes. And it's a great tool in uncovering who you are. Mm-hmm. We think we know who we are, right? But often we find that who we are is really not all of who we are. We often are the way our mothers told us to be, or our fathers told us to be, or society told us to be, or our peers told us to be. And then at some point we come to this place as an adult, and we think this is who we are. And when we start to look at it and like take it apart a little bit, we find out that it's not really who I am. This is who I was taught to be. Mm-hmm. And through shadow work, we can start to uncover what is it, who is it that you truly are, and what are your goals? What is the gold hidden in there, and where are your passions, and how can you live your life fully?
Yes. Tell me, why the word shadow?
Why the word shadow? Shadow that's a Jungian term. It's something that Carl Jung came up with. And it's what you don't know, that you don't know about yourself, which means it's in your shadow. Mm-hmm. It's like it's behind you. It's not in your knowing. It's hidden behind. It's kind of lurking in the shadows. Mm-hmm. I can give an example of one of my shadows. I was terrified of the dark as a child, and even as a young adult, terrified of the dark. And at some point in my 30s, I was so afraid of the dark that I would not go into our cellar in the house that I owned and lived in. Mm-hmm. It was a dirt floor cellar. It was a very old, scary cellar, and I wouldn't go down there by myself because I was terrified of what was down there. And when I started doing shadow work and looked at it, what was really hiding in that cellar was my own anger, the anger that I had repressed, the anger that I had denied myself to feel, the anger that was not safe for me to express as a young child. So I had put it into shadow. I had denied myself of being angry. But that anger was kind of lurking in the shadows and scaring me. Right. So one of the benefits for me of doing shadow work and uncovering my anger and taking it out and looking at it and polishing it off and learning how to harness the positive energy that can come out of anger, the ability to set clear boundaries, of being a force in life. And as a side effect, I have now no problem going down into any cellar or dark place without any fear.
Right. That's very exciting. That's progress, right?
Right?
If a person would actually write down on a piece of paper everything that's bothering them about life, if something is concerning them, if they, things that have been troubling them, almost everything that comes out of what they have written deals with other people, troubles and conflicts with other people. So how, these, and the whole idea is that we project our disowned parts of ourselves out onto other people, and we think it's their problem, but we have disowned a part of ourselves into that other person. So how do you resolve these relationship problems, or how do you teach others to resolve their relationship problems?
Oh, that's a big question. Let me first go back to why it is that some people just really irritates us.
Yeah.
And that is part of how parts of our personality gets put into shadow. Like when you're born into this life, you're born with what we call like a 360-degree way of living. Like every possible way of being and feeling and acting and reacting is available to you. And if you look at small children and infants, they are angry, happy, sad. They express all these emotions at all times. Mm-hmm. And as we grow up, we find out and we're being told and taught how not to be, how not to behave. And each time we're being told to not be a certain way, and sometimes it's not even taught or told in words, it's just by looking at how other behaves, you learn how to not behave. And we take a piece of this 360-degree pie, and it's like we put it in a bag behind ourselves. Like, well, it's not okay to be, for me, it was to be angry. It's not okay to be selfish. It's not okay to hit other people. It's not okay to be loud. And we stop being these ways, or we work hard at not being. So we put these ways of being in this bag behind us. And in with all those ways that we might think of negative behavior, like anger, hitting, selfishness, also goes sometimes are really shiny and beautiful parts, like being expressive and big. That might not be safe or accepted, so you put that into the bag. Or being singing, like you might be a child that sings a lot, but at some point you're like, stop singing. Somebody might tell you to stop singing at the moment where you're vulnerable, so you decide never to sing again. So you put your shiny, beautiful parts into the bag too. And sometimes when we throw these behaviors or ways of being into the bag, we miss. Mm-hmm. And so it flies around the world and it comes back right in your face, in the person that you're meeting on the street, or your partner, or your family. And you will see this behavior in them. So it's like the parts of yourself, or the ways of being that you have repressed within yourself, or denied within yourself. Because you have it within you, and because you've repressed it, it has, like, if you think of it as a vibration, and you meet somebody that matches this vibration, it really irritates you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So one way to start to figure out what you might have in shadow, or what might be in shadow that it's time for you to kind of take out and start to look at a little bit, is to notice what really irritates you in other people, what really sets you off. And it can be good and bad, because it can also be the golden shadow, that we call it, that you can find in, like, let's say Mother Teresa, who was such an amazing human being, and you would think, oh, I could never be that way. It's like in the AA tradition, they say, if you spot it, you got it.
Right.
Well, that is true. It's part of your golden shadow. So people that you really admire, and especially if you're thinking, I could never be that way, they are just so amazing. It's quite likely that you have that in you as well, but it's been put into shadow.
Yes. It just reminds me, this bag that you're talking about that's behind you is Pandora's box that needs to be opened and faced, and basically everything about that needs to be, you have to honestly be with it. Pandora's box, that's a great metaphor, I think.
I agree.
I do want to talk about how people can access your wonderful work, and if they go here and shadowwisdom.com/inner critic buster, and if they go there, they can get, now what is it, a free gift that you're giving?
Yeah, it's a workbook.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to start. I work with the inner critic a lot, and busting that inner critic and help the inner critic transform to an inner ally. And so shadowwisdom.com, that's my website where you can find out more about busting your inner critic and shadow work. And if you then do the /inner critic buster, there's a free workbook that I've put together to get you started on busting that inner critic.
Is the inner critic part of what we put in the bag that's behind us? Is that part of the shadow?
The inner critic often turns out to be a part of you that is making sure that you are not behaving in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
It was often came online very early in your life. If, let's say, for example, for me, it was not safe to be angry. The inner critic would come online to protect me, to make sure that I was just never express this anger, and it would stop me, and it would find ways to stop me so that I would not get angry, so I would not get in trouble and get hurt or get rejected or get, have my parents be upset with me, because that is not a nice or good feeling when you're a little child. And then at some point, this part that's been actually protecting us turns into then the part that starts nagging at you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a transformation that occurs often, that the voices that we hear as children, like, don't do that, or don't be a bad girl, or gosh, you look stupid, or why are you saying that? People are going to think you don't know what you're talking about. That voice kind of then keeps, we take it on as our own.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're grown-ups, like we are, we have this voice in our head that just keeps beating down on us, and we often we've gotten so used to this voice, we don't even know where it's coming from. But when I start to work with people and with this voice, it is almost never their own voice. It's often the voice of a parent or a primary caregiver, or friends, peers, classmates, teachers, and to start to parse out whose voice is it. That voice tends to lose power over you.
Yes.
And then we can access this part of you that's been protecting you your whole life, and say, well, maybe now we can start to become an inner ally instead of an inner critic.
And of course, the inner critic and the inner ally are one and the same, or can be. They're really not separate.
Often they're not separate.
Oh, they are until you heal the divide, as it were.
Right, right.
That's very interesting.
It's like working with the inner critic and updating it, letting the inner critic know that you are not a young child anymore.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes,
You
it's time to grow up, right?
Like, you've grown up, you've gathered a lot of maturity, a lot of knowledge, and you learned a lot of skills and coping mechanisms.
How do we use these reflections, these projections of our disowned selves, or how do we use the mirror to become conscious and aware? Every time, instead of the knee-jerk criticisms, the knee-jerk judgments, how do we turn that around so that every time we have the judgment that comes up, how do we heal that? How do we become conscious and aware and able to have this wonderful vantage point in our lives that where we can move on and not be hung up by projecting all the time?
Right. So one of the ways that I work with my clients and that I worked with myself and my husband is to recognize what is your story, because we all have stories about what happened, and a lot of times when frustration comes up, it's projection, or it's because you have a story. You have a story about the situation, and you're finding facts that your story is true. I can tell. So I teach my clients how to rewrite their story, and often in rewriting the story, the projection just melts away. The frustration or irritation that they can find or that they see in their partner just kind of melts away. So one way to do this is to just take the incident that really set you off, and take one incident and write out the story about what happened. Especially if somebody really upset you or really got you like worked up. Write down the whole story. Like, just take a big piece of paper and just write down the story and really embellish how hurtful, painful, frustrating this was. And after the story is written out, and this works easiest if you take like a short story, like one incident of something that happened, and then take the story and extract the facts. Like, what are the facts in this story that you can capture on camera or capture on a tape recorder? So it's exactly what happened and what was said without any judgments, without any assessments. So it could be, he walked out the room and closed the door. In my story, it might be, he stormed out of the room, pissed off, and he slammed the door because he really didn't care about how I was feeling. So in that statement, there was a lot of assessments and judgments. The facts are, he walked out the room and closed the door hard. Those are the facts. Everything else was assessments and judgments on my part. Then what I do after that, when I have all the facts pulled out, and it can be a tricky piece to pull out the facts. And that's where I often help my clients, is like to separate out their assessments and judgments from the actual facts of their story. We are often so attached to our feelings that we make them into facts. So once you have the facts down, then we rewrite the story. And it almost doesn't matter how you rewrite it, but what I ask you to do is to rewrite it in a positive way that is uplifting and empowering for you. So it could be, he walked out of the room and closed the door hard. Could be that he suddenly remembered that he had to run to CVS and get my prescription medicine before they closed. And in running out, the wind caught the door and just slammed it hard, and I am so grateful that I have this man in my life that really cares so much about me that he wants to get my prescription medicine on time. Or it could be any story. You can make up anything you want, as long as it's uplifting for you. And the interesting thing is that your facts supports either one of the story, your old story or your new story. And once you start doing this a couple of times, you start to find that when things happen, You can make up any story you want about what happened, and it will be true.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's very powerful. It does remind me of the work of Byron Katie, where you come out with a story that you're really angry, or you're just have this whole idea, and she talks about dropping your story entirely and questioning the truth of it. Is this really true? Is that true? And then when you get to it, it probably isn't true. I'm sure you've worked with her assessments, right?
I have done a lot of her work.
It's wonderful.
Yeah,
Because all of a sudden it's like you are removed. And then you're probably, I would say, after you've removed yourself and able to drop the story, then you're able to do exactly what you just said in an easier way with the writing and rewriting of the story.
Yep. And it works, and it's just an empowering, very empowering technique, because in rewriting the story and in looking for facts, because once you've rewritten your story, you will find evidence that your new story is true in everything you see and do, and it allows you to become the cause in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all of a sudden there's no possible way to be a victim when you are writing your own story.
That's perfect. Yes. Wow.
I have a little story about how I rewrote one of my stories about my husband.
Okay.
He always has an assessment and a judgment.
Yes.
When I fill up our dishwasher, he will open up the dishwasher and rearrange it. And then he will take things out and wash them by hand. And this used to really frustrate me and make me very upset, because I felt like I was invalidated. I felt like he was telling me that I was not a good housekeeper, that I obviously was stupid for not knowing how to correctly fill a dishwasher. So I had all these judgments and assessments about what it meant that he did this, and it would make me very irritated. And it would almost always lead to a fight later on that day, because I just harbored this resentment and irritation that he would do this to me. So I rewrote my story, and now I truly believe that he is rearranging the dishwasher because he really cares about me, and he really cares about creating a beautiful, loving home for the two of us.
Yes.
And he does this because he really cares about our things, and he wants to keep our glasses and our dishware beautiful and pristine, because he cares about our home. So now whenever I see him open up the dishwasher to rearrange it, my heart fills with love and appreciation for this man. And we just have, it really allows for me to have a really nice, beautiful time with him when he opens up the dishwasher, instead of becoming hostile and really frustrated.
Yeah, I love that example. And I love the whole idea of rewriting our stories. That is just beautiful. And actually, for people who love to write and people who are into their imaginations, you could rewrite every story that comes along with our projections. Rewrite those stories and have a blast doing it. And then I would say that practice alone could become a way of life, where we are no longer doing these knee-jerk reactions to what people do or don't do, or what we expect them to do or don't do. And it also, rewriting the stories helps to drop the assumptions we have about other people.
It is so true, and I think we often come to this place where we do have assumptions, and we do have judgments, and we do have ways of thinking about things that might not be real.
Mm-hmm.
And when you become skilled at rewriting your own story, almost anything can be true. And when you start to look for evidence that your story is real, you find it everywhere, and all of a sudden, you've done nothing. Well, that's not true. You've done all the work, and all of a sudden, the people around you are becoming so much more pleasurable to be with.
Yes.
And they're becoming so much more loving.
Yes. Well, and another way to look at it, too, if we continue to be irritated by what people are doing, like, say, your husband rearranging the stuff in the dishwasher, can you imagine if, and when, he passes on to another dimension and you wouldn't have him doing that anymore? You would miss it. You would miss him being, rearranging everything in the dishwasher.
Well, it's true, because now I look at it as one of his ways to express his love for me.
Yes.
So
yes.
I feel loved when he does it.
Well,
I could still look at it, if I choose to, as if he's doing it to teach me a lesson or to tell me that I don't know what I'm doing, but that is not empowering to me.
No.
And I really don't know what his motive is. And it almost doesn't matter, as long as when I feel loving, when I feel filled of love and compassion, it's like magic. People around you become loving and compassionate towards you.
Yes. Well, when you think about it, that's a projection too. But that's a projection that makes life a lot easier to live, and actually it raises the level of our vibration, so that we can truly live in a higher vibrational field when we do this work.
So I just saw some writing just the other day, and this is the On Your Gravestone, there will be 2 dates separated by a dash.
The dash.
That dash is your life. Make the most out of it. So why live that dash believing in stories that makes you feel bad on the inside?
Yes. Yes.
Make up some stories to make you feel good and believe in them.
That's right.
Make the most out of that dash.
For those of you who have just joined us, our guest is Karen Green. She is a mirror worker facilitator and mirror shadow work facilitator. But of course, the mirror. Do you ever work with the mirror where you can actually look into the mirror and resolve some of these conflicting projections that we've been talking about?
When we do in a shadow work weekend, when we do facilitated shadow work processes with people, we often will like it's all working with the mirror, like all working with your projections, and it becomes in a shadow work process, it becomes really clear that when you are looking at somebody else, often what you see is not that person, but it's an image of them that you carry within you, and it's a projection of some part that's in shadow for you. And we use role players in our shadow work processes, and we put out so that you get to look at your different parts of your personality, and you have role players hold these parts. And so it might look like it's your mother or your father standing on the carpet, or your teacher or your brother. And when we start to look more carefully at it, it's not really your mother at all. It's the tape that you have of your mother in your head or inside of you. So it's the part of your mom that you've kind of taken on as a shadow.
Yeah, and this mirror work really reflects both ways. So we think that when we do the mirror work, that the other person is our mirror, but we are their mirrors too. And I had an especially profound reaction one time to this very truth that, you are my mirror. We got this dog that was very wild. We brought her home, and she was, my husband brought her home. He had traveled a long distance to get her. And when she was a wild dog. She lived outside. As soon as she saw me, she ran away with her tail between her legs, and she was completely wild and obviously had been abused. So we all took a nap together, and when I woke up, she was lying there looking at me. And I thought, okay, my dog is my mirror, but I am her mirror too. And it was just like a profound revelation to me that it works both ways. It's not one way or the other. And the more people who are, well, as you say, nobody has to do anything. It's really an inside job, and we're the ones that have to do the work. It's basically nobody else's responsibility to do this work, but we have to do it.
That is true. That is true. And you have the power to change your circumstance in your life. And one of the most empowering things I found with personal growth and with shadow work especially is that people around me are changing because I am changing.
Yes.
It was funny, my daughter just tells me, like, whenever I'm PMSing, Mom, or she said, there are some days in the month when I believe you do everything you can to piss me off. And then I realized I have PMS.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Right? So it's like, rewrite the story. And be curious. This is something that actually my sisters taught me. My sister is a life coach in Sweden. And she's taught me to be curious. Whenever somebody is saying anything to me that makes me feel icky on the inside, or makes me feel like, ooh, that didn't feel good, or ouch, that hurt a little bit. And when that happens, we often find ourselves making a lot of decisions about what happened. Like,
or assumptions too, right? Assumptions,
like I assume that you're saying this because you really wanted to. Did you really want to hurt me? And so what she's taught me is to be curious and speak up. It's like, oh, that hurt a little bit. Is this what you meant to say? Is this what I heard? Did I hear you right? Is this good? This is what I believe that you meant to say. Is that true?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
And by speaking up immediately and asking, is that true? Is this what you wanted to do? It will deflate the situation almost immediately, and it will give the other person a chance to respond or reflect on, oh, like, you know what? Maybe it was part of my shadow leaking out. Because that's another thing, when we throw parts of our personality into this bag of shadows that we carry, this bag is not totally leak-proof. It's got little holes in it, and sometimes it leaks out. So I may have put my anger into that shadow bag, but it will leak out. And it will leak out in sneaky ways. It will leak out when I'm not paying attention. Like, I might have a flash temper. I might get, like, really, really upset when my 5-year-old daughter spills a glass of milk. I might have, like, really instantly blown up and got very angry, and then afterward feel like what happened? I'm not an angry person. Why did that happen? So it might just be that the person that you are being curious about, like, why did you say that? What happened? They might have had a piece of the shadow leak out. And by you being curious, you're actually allowing them a moment to reflect on, why did I say that? What was really my intention?
So it really is, everything is a learning experience. And what can I learn from this? What was it that I really meant to say? And also, when people say things that are hurtful or we think are hurtful, we can take their language and say, this is the word you used. Is this the word that you really meant when you use that word? And I think sometimes they'll think, well, they'll realize that the word is a little harsh, and then like you said, it deflates the situation immediately by using the words that they have used. Yeah. But on the other hand, sometimes people can be very, very difficult, and we need to rewrite those stories. I like that. That's really great. And another thing is, how do you work with archetypes? And how do working with, it seems like working with archetypes might be very helpful. For instance, the inner critic is an archetype, and the inner ally is an archetype. And you had already explained how you work with those, but what other archetypes do you, or don't you? I mean, do you work with archetypes in general in your work?
In shadow work, we use with 4 archetypes, and we kind of place it all within those 4 archetypes. It's the lover, the magician, the sovereign, and the lover.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the inner critic will be in the magician quarter, that we call it, and it will be the magician is the place where we learn how to detach and see things and get some perspective. Mm-hmm. And see what are the different possibilities here, see different options. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We also work with the warrior, which is about setting boundaries, creating identity. And sometimes when somebody really is encroaching on us and we feel, especially in a relationship, when something doesn't feel right, it might just be that our boundaries might be violated. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it really is that we've set clear boundaries and they're just not being honored. And then we always have a choice. When your boundaries are being violated, almost always brings up some anger. Mm-hmm. So when anger comes up, it's an opportunity to look at, have my boundaries been violated? And then you have a choice. What do you want to do about it? You have a choice to maybe change your boundaries or enforce your boundaries, or to make sure that this person cannot overstep my boundaries anymore. And when we're looking at our boundaries, sometimes we put our boundaries so far out to protect ourselves, mm-hmm. that people cannot help but overstep our boundaries. So mm-hmm. if you find yourself being angry a lot, it might just be that your boundaries are way too far out there. Mm-hmm. And you set them so far out that people just cannot help but overstep them. And it might be time to reassess where your boundaries are.
Right. Yeah, it does seem that our boundaries are very important, especially different cultures have different boundaries too, so that it would be good to know how that works in your interpersonal relationships. You know, I think that's just something that came to mind.
Yeah, it's like I grew up in Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
And Swedish people are often more reserved than Americans are.
Yes.
So when my mother would come to visit me, we go into a store and the store clerks will say, "Hello, how are you? Can I help you?" Mm-hmm. She gets very uncomfortable and she turns around and walks out of the store because she feels like she's being sold to, or that because they're nice to her, she has to give them something. And so it's very uncomfortable for her to be greeted by so many people, and she feels obligated to do something. Like she feels an obligation to purchase from them because they're being so nice to her. Mm-hmm. And it's allowing me some reflection on culture and see like how different we react and how different we are. How so many ways of being is not truly coming from who we are, but from what our cultures had taught us to do.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's a fascinating observation. So, would you say that doing this work helps us to embrace all parts of ourselves, and in that process, we can forgive other people and forgive ourselves more easily Is that something you have discovered to be true?
Yes. Yes. In working with what's in shadow and looking at what's there and kind of bringing it out and polishing it off, and in what we call a safe container, which is when we do a shadow work weekend, we create a container where you can take out these things from the bag and take them out and polish them off. And some of the ways of being that we've put in this bag, it's not safe. It's not safe to take out in your family to try them on, or at work to try them on. So in the shadow work weekend and the shadow work container, it's like a ritual space where you can take out these way and try them on and see what is the gold nugget in there, what is the energy in there, what is the strength in this part of the shadow that you denied yourself for so long, and take it out and try it on in a place when there are no real world consequences and when no one can get hurt. So like for me to take out my anger and look at it and do this in a shadow work container was a very safe place for me to kind of play around with it and see, what does it want? What is it about? And find out, how can I set clear and strong boundaries without just taking my sword out and slashing everywhere, which is what my warrior wanted to do when I first accessed this anger, was just really slash everywhere. And then to kind of really get in touch with this energy of anger, and then learning how to use it in a productive and constructive way.
Karen, you talk about the shadow work weekend. Let us know, when is your next shadow work weekend, and is there a page that people can access to sign up for that?
Yep, they can go to my website, shadowwisdom.com, and under events, there will be a page there for the next upcoming, which is February 13 to 15. It's a weekend seminar. It's a non-residential, and it's here in central Massachusetts. There's another one coming up in May. And at the website shadowwork.com is a list of all the different shadow work seminars that are ongoing all over the world.
Okay, so I want to just reiterate that if anybody wants to receive the workbook that you are so generously offering, that's shadowwisdom.com/inner critic buster, and we can get a workbook where we can work out some of these troublesome, irksome things that we have to confront every day. But then you talked about a shadow. What was the other website called?
Shadowwork.com.
Shadowwork.com. And is that where is it the shadowwisdom.com where they can go to the events and go? Okay.
At shadowwisdom.com, it's my website.
Yes.
You can go there to find out about all my upcoming events. You can also sign up there for my newsletter, which will keep you updated on an all upcoming event. My certification as a shadow work facilitator is from Shadowwork, shadowwork.com. And so if you are not able to come to Massachusetts, it's quite likely there's a shadow work seminar going on somewhere near you, and you can find that out at shadowwork.com.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Also on my website, shadowwisdom.com, you can find out more about my coaching programs, the Inner Critic Buster.
And that would be something that, I mean, we can do that. Would people do that over the phone? That kind of
That would be over the phone or over Skype.
Oh, good. And you can also, as you now know, you could do it privately on Google Hangouts.
Now that you've taught me how to use Google Hangouts.
Yes. We wouldn't go live, you wouldn't go live, but you can talk to people without going live. And I think it might be more stable than Skype, but I'm not sure. And then before we got on the Google Hangout, the before we went live, you and I were talking about the sacred clown and how, and that's an American Indian tradition where the sacred clown goes out into the initiation process where people are basically struggling with their life and death. And the sacred clown becomes a distraction and creates chaos so that the initiations are successfully completed because of that. And so we can look at the irksome, troublesome situations in our lives as a sacred clown because they are there to teach us. They're there to help us. And that is, in essence, rewriting the story, as we were talking before. And if we saw everything as a sacred clown and looked at all of our relationships as in teaching us to learn about ourselves, we would be evolved, I think. What is your understanding of the sacred clown?
What I know of the sacred clown is it also will be the person in your village that would really notice what's in shadow for you.
Right.
Because often what's in shadow for you is very apparent to everybody else around you.
Perfect. Right? Yeah.
Right? And so by making parody, which is what the clown would do, would make parody of your shadow, the clown would allow you to to become open to looking at what is in your shadow for you.
Yes. It's a perfect opportunity to to receive the teaching in an instructive way instead of becoming defensive, which so many people become defensive. But
it's true because we have a lot of pride.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We have a lot of time invested in believing that we are in a particular way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And by being open and curious, to what other people's ideas about you are, and a really gutsy thing to do is to actually interview people in your life, preferably people you feel safe with, and ask them to honestly reflect back to you, like, what do you think is in my shadow? And being willing to listen with an open mind and put your defenses down while you hear it and really refrain from defending yourself.
Yes.
Just listen. To just take it as, take their answer as a gift to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a perfect way of learning to drop our defenses. Which really, when I become defensive, it's very annoying to me that I've done it. I've pretty much learned not to do that anymore. So, Karen, it's been a pleasure to have you here. I know that people I think 45 minutes is about what anybody's attention span can get. What are your parting words of wisdom to our audience about this kind of work, doing this kind of work, besides coming and working with you, which I think is a wonderful thing to do, but what other words of wisdom do you have for us?
Be gutsy and be curious.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you. That's perfect. This Google Hangout will be available to everybody probably within the hour, and we will pass this around widely. So thank you so much for coming, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.